All right, very good. So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us this evening for another session here. We're doing the Life Under Lockdown. It's our second installment, and we're really excited that everybody can be here. We're going to have three presenters today, three fabulous women who are going to be talking about life under lockdown, what it's like for us to be locked down at home, some of the stressors that we're facing, some of the stressors that our children are facing, and how we can deal with those. Pastor Boyd is going to be giving us some bios, and then we're going to do opening prayer. Then we're going to get started with Dr. Bone, then Dr. Charlesetta Scott, and then after that, Jacinth Theodore.
All right, we are privileged this evening to have some outstanding ladies to lead out in our workshop this evening. This global pandemic has shifted the public consciousness so much that many people are plagued with uncertainty about their jobs and stressors, and so we look to get help for our students, for our families, and for individuals who are struggling. And I'm still getting a bunch of text messages. So if you know somebody texting me, tell them I'm tied up right now. Our first guest is Dr. Tiffany Bone. She is the Assistant Superintendent in the Jacksonville North Pulaski School District in Arkansas, Jacksonville, Arkansas. She's a proud mother of two amazing children. And Dr. Bone is a lifelong learner, 25 years of experience in public school education and 2 years as a college professor. She served in elementary school, as a K through 12 curriculum coordinator, administrator at the elementary level and secondary level, and now she is the assistant superintendent of schools in that district. She is the daughter of the McClures. You see them on there. They see them smiling over there. They're waving. That's their daughter. And we're so glad to have her with us this evening. Next presenter is Dr. Charlesetta Shelton Scott. Dr. Scott hails from Los Angeles, California. She currently lives in Atlanta. She is the mother of two amazing daughters. She went to school with at the fabulous Oakwood University. That's where you say amen. That's where you say amen. She worked at Hinsdale Hospital. She got a medical degree, I think, from Meharry. She is a board certified psychiatrist with a specialty in child and adolescent psychiatry. I think she's been in this field over 30 years. She's a dear friend of my wife's and her sister Diane, and glad to have sister Dr. I thought I'd call her Dr. Cha-Cha, Dr. Charlesetta Shelton Scott with us. And then we have Cynthia Theodore. Where is she? Sister Jazzy. About 25 years in the healthcare industry as a certified nurse practitioner. She's worked in numerous families throughout the United States, Hawaii, and folks in the African diaspora. She's been an instructor in the University of Hawaii, and on and on and on and on. Trained and specialized in marriage and family therapy. She practices therapeutic relationship coaching, and she's in Maryland, I believe. And so glad to have these three fabulous ladies with us. We had Dr. Terry Parks listed, but he's going to come back and talk with us when we talk with the men, which we'll be doing shortly. I want to have a word of prayer, and then we're going to start our service. Let's bow our heads together. Gracious Father in heaven, it's our grand privilege to come to you on the wings of prayer. We ask that you would please be in our midst this afternoon, this evening, as we talk. Bring insight, inspiration, encouragement, that we might be able to handle the vicissitudes of life as we face this pandemic and families jostle and tensions build and children are confused. We need the calming balm of Gilead. So speak peace to us tonight as our presenters give us insight. Speak through them to us. In the name of him who's altogether lovely, we pray. Amen. Sister Vanessa?
Yes. All right, so we're going to be starting out with Dr. Tiffany Bone. As you need me to share my screen and show your slides, just let me know. Dr. Bone.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Vanessa. And you can put the screen up anytime you'd like, to put the slideshow up anytime you'd like. As an educator, I'm just here to reassure parents who may be on the call that everything's going to be okay. I mean, we are all in this together, and we know that you are doing your best at home to educate your children, and that is not your primary job. Your primary job is to be a parent to your children, and we understand that as educators. I don't speak for all educators, but I feel like I speak for many of us when I say that your best is good enough. And that's what I want you to walk away from my presentation understanding, is that what you are doing at home with your children, your very best is truly good enough, and we are not expecting you to do our jobs exactly. So I'd like to advance the slide, if you would, please, Vanessa, to the next one. I think this letter kind of summarizes how we feel. No, back one more, please. Sorry. This letter to parents, if you can see that, kind of summarizes what we feel. It was one that one of my teachers was sharing with her parents. I don't think she wrote it. I think she found it someplace, but it basically summarizes how we as educators feel. We're the ones who are the teachers, and we understand that right now, what we're trying to do is give you something to do with your children at home that will help them to not fall behind educationally, but most of us are not putting out brand new material. So we understand that we just need you as parents to share your calm and your strength with your children during this trying time, and not worry as much about the educational piece. And I know that sounds crazy coming from an educator, but to me, the best thing that you can do for your kids is to reassure them that everything's going to be okay, and to do your very best to help them. And in an effort to help you do that, I did bring some resources that could help you, that have helped me as a parent in the past, and that I think might help you at home with some of the work that you're getting. I don't know what you're getting, and I don't know your age groups, so I shared several resources on the slides. The main thing that I wanted to talk about is the comfort and the stability of a schedule. I'm certainly not saying that you have to use this schedule that I'm sharing, but this is one of the schedules that we've shared with our parents. It's just for them to have an idea of what we're talking about. You'll notice that there are 2 times for academic times, but one of them has time for no electronic devices. Academic time doesn't have to be exactly what we prescribe at school. It could just be reading a book, sharing a book with your kids, playing games with them that are educational. But this was a schedule just to kind of get them into a routine, because routine seems to be a stabilizing force for kids, and it is a source of comfort for them. Many of the resources that I've shared are on here, but my very favorite, if you have secondary children, anyone in grades 6 through 12, is Khan Academy. I am not a mathematician. I do not claim to be. I have been an administrator in K through 12, and often when I went into higher level math classes, I would go to Khan Academy first and look up the skill that they were learning so that I'd make sure I understood it before I went in. So as an educator, I don't know everything in education because I didn't specialize in everything. And as a parent, you certainly didn't. What I love about Khan Academy, and you can click on any of these pictures if the pastor is going to share the slideshow with you, and it'll take you directly to the website, is you can kind of just search anything that your child is doing in homework, and pretty much anything at the secondary level is there, as well as resources to help your child prepare for the ACT or the SAT and to prepare them for college. So this is probably my favorite site for secondary students. I also included a Scholastic site that has a lot of reading materials on this particular slide. If you'll advance, please, Vanessa. Another one of my favorites for younger children is PBS, and I really love the fact that Michelle Obama is reading aloud on Mondays on PBS. Again, you can just click on this site and it will take you to the different programs they have scheduled. They have lots of educational programs on there for kids just to keep them entertained and educated in their time off. And it's mostly for the younger children. And there's another site over to the side. I don't know how you see the screen. I'm seeing it kind of blocked, but there are a couple of sites on this one. If you'll advance, please, Vanessa. Again, additional sites, Epic, getepic.com and Storyline. You can mid-level education here and some lower education. If you'll advance another slide. These are good for social emotional learning. At this time, many of us are stressed because the there's just so much uncertainty. One of my very best friends is a counselor that is over the counseling department in the Little Rock Public Schools. And these are some of the resources that she shared with the school districts in our area. And I said, Sesame Street, are you kidding me? And she said, no, really, there are some excellent videos on Sesame Street that explain this pandemic and that explain things in the terms that kids can understand. But when I went to Brain Pop, and when you click on this one, it will take you to a short 4-minute video. And I was like, well, I think I understand it better from Brain Pop, from this little 4-minute video geared towards kids, how this pandemic spreads better than I did from any of the scientists who were speaking to us. It's just a very simplified way, and it really talks about the importance of hand washing. So there are all of these sites you can click on, and they have videos on there for kids and for adults that kind of help you to understand how to cope in this trying time, just in very short clips, things that we're using with our students. And I shared the last slide of resources for you is the site that we created in our district. We created this site to train our teachers because they're not accustomed to teaching in this way either. And then we figured out from all the calls we were getting from our parents that they needed some additional assistance. So there are 2 places to click on this particular slide, and they both take you to the JMPSD e-learning hub. One of them has more resources for parents, and that's at the top right here. And at the bottom, there's a plethora of resources for students. And again, homework help in pretty much any subject area you can think of is going to be, everything is compiled in this one area. So most of the sites that I mentioned earlier, along with a ton more, are here if you just click on these sites. So I was asked to share those resources and to share with you the fact that as educators, we are not expecting you to be a perfect teacher at home. We simply want you to be there for your kids and to help them to get engaged with their teachers as they're trying to teach, and then support them in the best way that you can. You are not expected to be an expert. I hope these sites help you, and I am open for any questions that you might have.
Pastor, as far as these sites are concerned, I know Dr. Bowen said that she would that you could share the presentation, but as far as the links are concerned, would you make these links available to the participants on the call, just the links?
Yes, so the links are all in there, and the presentation, you just click on it, it takes you straight to the site.
We'll put them on the website and the church Facebook page.
I built them into the pictures so that all you have to do is click and it'll take you where you need to go.
And they'll be up right after this. We'll put them all up. Sister Faye, you here? She's on there. Let's put them all up.
And they're all free. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bone. We appreciate that. And 2 big takeaways from that for me are creating a schedule. I know me personally, I wake up every day, take a shower, and get dressed like I'm going somewhere, even though I'm stuck inside the house, because it makes me feel more prepared for the day. So creating a schedule, also taking advantage of some of these resources so they can help you as you're trying to train your children in a way that's very, very different from you. So Dr. Bone, we really appreciate your time. Next, we're going to have Dr. Charlesetta Scott.
Should we wait to ask questions that are related to children and/or distant learning until the end of the presentation?
Yeah, we're going to wait until the very end of the presentation for all questions.
We're going to give each one's going to give a short presentation.
Okay, am I on?
You are.
Okay. Well, I sure want to thank you, Pastor Boyd, for giving me the opportunity to share some things. I know we don't have a lot of time, so stop me when my time is up. But I had 3 areas that I wanted to talk about and share with the group this evening. Talking from my perspective as a psychiatrist, dealing with stress is something that is a big part of my practice every day for many years. So I want to talk specifically about the stress model, sort of the medical model of why we get stressed, the physical, emotional reactions and where that comes from. And also focus a little bit on children and our role as parents, and then a little bit about what happens when a patient has a mental health condition or disorder. I saw lots of questions that came through from the congregation about managing stress. So I just want to take a minute. Some of these things you may already know and practice, but this is a good time to reinforce those habits. First of all, talking about the stress model, many people are unaware of the fact that there is a physical chemical process that goes on in the brain when we are responding and reacting to situations. But I think more importantly, what our brain reacts to are the thoughts that we have. So I want to talk just for a minute about that whole process, because that becomes critical in how we begin to use certain tools to manage those thoughts and the triggers that create a stress response. There are several things that the brain does. Regulates our mood. It's a regulatory organ. So our sleep, our thoughts, our mood, our emotions are very much a part of a physical process. And there are chemicals in the brain that release endorphins and various neurochemicals that can create anxiety, stress, some of the emotions, heart rate changes. The thymus has to do with collecting information and how our brain processes that information. Our thoughts become a huge source of information for the brain, and it starts reacting chemically. The amygdala is another part of the brain that regulates the memories of all the events that we go through, and it kind of stores it there in case it needs it for a future time. So what happens when people are experiencing various changes in their environment or situations that remind them of other situations is that they begin to respond chemically. And what happens is they'll have a pattern of thinking that will trigger the brain to release a certain chemical. So this stress model is quite incredibly covert. It's not always something that we're aware of, the thoughts that we have, the habits that we develop as a result of a certain thought process. So you always hear people say, oh, think positively, be positive, that's gonna make you feel better, and that's actually quite true. There are probably about 45,000 thoughts a day that run through our mind, and many of them we're conscious of, but many of them we're not. And many of these thoughts have been created over time through experiences that are linked to both positive and negative experiences. It seems like humans in general tend to cling to those negative thoughts, maybe as a preservation or survival mode, but we hold on to those experiences, we store them in the amygdala, and then when anything similar triggers it, boy, we have that same response. And over time, that repetitive response becomes a cycle of how we see things. So if you have had experiences in your life that make you feel uncertain, insecure, out of control, and you've spent most of your life trying to develop a way to manage that, to feel safe and secure, and then suddenly all of those things are taken away from you, then you are feeling in a state of stress and a state of vulnerability. And as a result of that, so many of the thoughts that have been laid down in the past with those experiences start flooding your mind. So it's not so much that we have the control that we think we have, but we have created a life that has given us a sense of control through our activities, through our relationships, through the things that we do have control over. And as a result of that, this pandemic has really tapped into so many of those deeper fears, those basic insecurities that we have as human beings. And then we realize that we have laid down negative thought processes that sometimes can take over. So the thoughts generate sort of a emotional response through a chemical pathway. As a result, we'll have attitudes that can be either positive or negative. Our perceptions of what we're experiencing can be either traumatic, or you can see some positive light at the end of the tunnel. In the end, behaviors can change. People can become more withdrawn, more irritable. They may be overreacting, taking things out of proportion, and their response may not always be something that they're aware of. The trick here is understanding that we have control over a few things, or maybe not full control, but we have the capacity to guide our thoughts. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of those tools and ways that we can learn to guide our thoughts to a positive place, to challenge irrational fears, and to be more self-aware, and to learn how to understand that most of our experience is through our thoughts and through our perceptions, and that has been developed and laid down over the years. Okay, so that's a whole lot of stuff. I don't want to go any further into that, just to make you aware that there is a lot going on in the brain that we're not always aware of that influences our life experiences and our responses. The other thing I want to talk about, and I was so happy to hear about the educational resources, and the most important thing is that you are good enough as a parent doing the job that you're designed to do. Because in general, our role is pretty much the developing support and the guidance of that developing child. So I wanted to talk about a little bit about what is helpful for kids emotionally. And as a parent, understanding that a lot of it is laid down over time. The most important thing to keep in mind is, just like they always tell you when you're on the airplane and in case there's an emergency, when that oxygen mask drops, you put yours on first before you try to assist the child, because you are so valuable to that child's survival that you have to survive. Therefore, I say, take care of your own mental health, be aware, and learn the tools that you need so that you can make sure you're handling this yourself. That loss of control, that feeling of insecurity, how are you handling it? Because believe it or not, those subtle little changes in the tone of your voice and the way you react to things, the kids feel it, whether or not you're trying to show a strong face or not. Kids sense change in you and your reactions. So don't be fooled to think that they're not aware that things are going on. And you have to be honest to some degree, not to burden them with all your fears and worries, but acknowledge that, yes, this is a difficult time. And then spend the time doing what you need to do for yourself in terms of positive thought processes, affirmations, things that can help you to challenge when you are overreacting to a stressful thought, these catastrophic worries on a day-to-day basis. When you don't have control over so many things in our environment, especially in a time like this, think about what you do have control over. We all have control over our breath. So sometimes it's just a matter of taking a minute, taking some deep breaths, being aware that, yes, I can control my breath. And with that, I can reduce my heart rate. I can stop the shaking and tenseness I feel inside. And we can also begin to explore other things that help us. One of the things that studies have shown is that laughter and humor creates a better balance in the brain. It allows us to have more creativity. We're using both the left and the right side of the brain. So laughter and trying to make things lighthearted becomes very helpful in reducing that negative thought process. And having a way to collect positive memories, either through affirmations or scriptures or poetry or music, and past experiences that are positive. Sometimes you have to go back really hard and identify those things that we take for granted that were actually wonderful things in our lives. At any point, it becomes a process of, what do I have control over? My breath, my thoughts, the things that you can handle on a real day-by-day, moment-by-moment thing. You have to start relying on these things more. We don't have the gym to go to or a job that keeps us busy and productive, feeling like we're doing something positive. We don't always have the chance to connect with friends and to have a confidant. We don't always have the opportunity to go shopping and browsing or go to a movie. So now it becomes these real simple things that we have to do. Experience the sunshine, experience, walking, and the environment creates a way to get into other senses. Like, you can see, what do I smell? What do I feel? What do I hear? And get out of your head, because many of the things that we're thinking about, you have to challenge yourself and say, can I control that? Can I fix that right now? Is it helping me to think about this? So those are some of the things that I think really become important in handling these in situations where you feel out of control and our negative thought processes begin to run rampant. With kids, I think honesty is really important. And as a parent, what you model is probably more powerful than what you say. But I know that there are questions that kids have, and it's important for you to, first of all, ask them, what do you know about this pandemic? What have you heard? Because there's so much misinformation, and kids sometimes get things distorted, and they'll get something fearful in their head, and you have no idea that they're holding on to that thought. So ask them questions about what they understand and how are they feeling about it. And be honest when you have thoughts and feelings that they ask you, how do you feel, mommy, daddy? So that you guys can validate each other. Now, it's your role, of course, to offer them all the positives that you've already created for yourself, and show them the strategies that you're using in ways that are appropriate for them, age appropriate for them. The structure and the routines are great, and I love seeing that there's creativity time and down quiet time and opportunities for you to do some interactions, because the more you make kids feel like things are normal, the better they're going to be able to relax. Their security, their sense of safety, you all can create on a day-to-day basis. And that doesn't mean everything has to be perfectly rigid as a structured schedule, but put the time in somewhere and give them a sense every day at the beginning of the day that this is how our day is going to go. Sometimes you can share an affirmation, a positive thought, a slogan for the day. And you can create some games and things that they can use in between their chores and their schoolwork that they can come back to throughout the day, that connects you with them, that gives them a sense of having control over what they're doing at that moment. So, and then the last thing I want to talk about, and this is something that I deal with every day, there's a growing population of people who are suffering from mental illness, from depression, anxiety, bipolar. And this is a part of their everyday life. So you can imagine that when they have added stress like this pandemic, it can mean so much more devastating kinds of consequences for them. And my understanding, for the most part, is that all of us, whether you have a mental illness or not, are prone towards episodes of anxiety or depression, and stress is a part of our lives that can trigger that, along with health problems. But the last thing I would say is, with a patient who has mental health issues, their emotional responses, their chemical reactions to stress can be quite different and more exacerbated or intense. And so you may have to be more prepared and aware that they're going to be more reactive, and have other places or people available through either counseling professionally, or if you have that relationship where you can comfort them and help them to utilize whatever coping skills that they have, with deep breathing, with positive thoughts, with meditation, with aromatherapy. These are things that are helpful. When you have a mental disorder that is diagnosed and you've been in treatment and maybe even on medications, it is very important to check with their professional, because they may need adjustments to those medications. If they're not sleeping, if they're having issues with their appetite, or if I'm not making sure that they are taking their medications. It's been really a struggle, because I've had lots of patients who, because of loss of insurance or for various reasons, they didn't come in for a long period of time. And then they were forced to come in because of the situation. Their symptoms got out of control. So there's so many different scenarios that are going on, and we all have those stressors. And it may be not mental health for you, it may be physical stressors that are creating increased anxiety. At any rate, the most important thing is to be aware that this is a time where we're going to be triggered and challenged to a very high level, and we have to utilize those resources within ourselves. Our thoughts, our perceptions, our attitudes are influenced so greatly, and the chemical responses require that we start to take things 1 minute at a time sometimes, definitely one day at a time. So I hope there's some useful information that I've shared, and I'll be open for questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Scott. We really appreciate you taking your time, and thank you so much for expressing specifically the need for self-awareness. Parents, it's so important, like she was saying, for you to take care of yourself first, and then you'll be capable to take care of your children. So thank you again for your presentation. And now we will have Jacinth Theodore. Jazzy, are you available, my dear?
Okay. You can hear me, right?
Yes, we sure can.
Okay, great. You know, I see the sun is shining in my eye, and actually it's one of those high windows, I can't touch it. You know, subsequent to the COVID virus, families right now, we're experiencing what I call a watershed moment. This watershed moment is very significant. It's a figure of speech that we use to indicate that when a change occurs, the thing that occurs will no longer be the same. That's what's happening here with this COVID virus. The watershed, I like to use that figure of speech, because you see the land that the watershed occurs on, the streams and the rivers, they divide and they break, and they flow into a basin, a catch basin. That water pours into the basin and it changes the basin. The water in the basin increases. The marine life is impacted by that volume of water. The movement of the water, the current underneath changes. Now, I want you to know that that's what's happening to our homes. We are the catch basins of that division, the thing that has happened that we'll never go back to. What's happening is that we have the economy pouring into our homes. We have the educational system that has changed. The students are now learning from home. We used to go out to socialize. We used to go out to our family and friends, their homes, their churches. We used to go to restaurants. We used to go to different meeting places. Now we're forced to stay home. The problem with that is that there are problems and issues that exist at home. And because we're all at home at the same time, we can no longer avoid those problems. So as a result of that, we can get stressed, we can develop resentment, we get angry. Subsequent to all of those changes that has happened, we're losing people that we love. That's significant. I want to say to my friends out here that the time to love is now. We're not coming back here. This is not a dress rehearsal. We won't be correcting anything. I want to suggest now 2 techniques that should help the families that are forced to stay at home. Because as I said, you are now faced with problems that you used to avoid. You used to exit your home to avoid these interactions with your children, with your husband, with your wife, with the grandparents. You can't do that anymore, all right? I just want to give you 2 techniques. That's all. I'm going to ask you to do it for 2 weeks. That's all. Now, there's a lot of learning that goes on when you walk into your therapy or your mental health provider's office. They give you lots of techniques. They give you time to learn it. However, because we don't have time and you have your provider, your own provider, I just want you to put something in your pocket that'll make the stay at home a little bit easier. 2 techniques to reduce your stress and to reduce the events of anger and resentment that you might experience, all right? It's really important. One of them is to maintain your boundaries. When you maintain your boundaries, you're going to maintain a sense of individuality, you're going to maintain a sense of stability, and you're going to feel growth. It's very, very important. There is one disclaimer that I want to share with you, that parents are allowed to respectfully choose whether these boundaries will be rigid or whether they'll be loose subsequent to assessing the safety of the children's environment. All right? I want you to-
I have a question. I don't understand. You're using a technical term, somewhat technical term. What do you mean when you say maintain boundaries? Give us a use case or an example of what do you mean when you say boundaries?
Okay, so for example, you want to take what you want to do, because you're at home with everybody. You want to take some private time. You might want to go outside in the backyard and sit down and maybe read. You might want to go out on the fire escape if you're in New York. You might want to go sit in your car. You may want to go into your bedroom, the den or downstairs, and you want to close the door. This gives you the feeling, the sense of centering. Sometimes you have to center. And so what I'm saying to you is you maintain a boundary. That's a physical boundary when you go to a place. As a family member, if I see you out in the backyard, what I really should do, what you should do, what you have to do is ask to be invited into the private space. Honey, can I talk to you? Babe, can I join you? Mom, can I come in where you are? Request invitation. If you are behind a closed door and I walk to a closed door, I may be a teenager, an adolescent, I may be the husband or the wife. Approach the closed door with a knock. Knock, Wait for a positive response, then enter. This is really simple. Jazz, why are you telling us this? Because what happens are when we stay at home for long periods of time, our boundaries loosen. And I feel, even though we love each other, we're very close. When I close the door and I want to center, knock, wait for my response, then enter. All right? I want you to know something else. Like I said, very, very simple things, very simple things. I want you to do it for 2 weeks. Practice it every day, do it for 2 weeks. Here's something that's really, really simple. Practice perspective thinking. We're all in the same family. We have similar characteristics, but we see things differently. I want you to know that. We see things differently. We don't see things the same way. For example, your son is doing a video game. He's got the remote control in his hand and you're calling him. He is acutely fixed on that screen. His focus is straight. It's very possible that he's not listening, so he may not hear your first voice. Instead of walking up and using firm force and removing it, I want you to be aware that we all think differently. His perspective was that he was connected elsewhere. So this is where we are challenged to center and use our voices. Use our voices to communicate. Remember that you have to take private time. The other thing that you must do is think from perspectives. I'm not thinking the way you are thinking. I want you to also know that there's something that we do. We have ways of thinking in our mind that's incorrect. And so what we do is, as long as I have the thought in my mind, I think it's correct. However, when I communicate with you, you might disagree with it. And this is where our thoughts are triggered. We call those thoughts cognitive distortions, incorrect ways of thinking. When I speak with my clients, I tell them sometimes you have to change the statement in your head so that you can line up with the reality of what's going on. We have a type of cognitive distortion. We call it emotional reasoning. I did this a lot. Emotional reasoning is when I, the thinker, believes that because I feel it is true, then it must be true. And so then I start the conversation with you and I'm going in about something that you did because I feel it. I feel that it's true. Allow yourself to know that people think differently. So what you're going to do is you're going to ask a question rather than going with a statement. I want you to know that in communication, when a question arises in the communication, it is a natural de-escalator. Because you see, when you ask a question with an tone inclination at the end, you expect your partner to answer it. For example, I don't know why you don't pick me up on time every day. Now, allow them to answer that. What I want to do is I want to challenge you and I want to keep that rhythm up. I don't care why you're not picking me up. I just want to argue with you. The natural de-escalator in an argument is a question. So when I ask it, I'm stopping, breaking the rhythm, and I'm going to wait for you to answer me. Oftentimes, your question informs me, and that contributes to the way my body changes and my energy changes. Let's have respect for a different perspective. Now, I'll tell you something, another cognitive distortion, another incorrect way of thinking. You see, these distortions that we use, we have chosen to use them because they protect us. It helps us survive. It's what we call a maladaptive coping style mechanism. We do that. I want you to know there's something else that we do. It's called justification. This way of thinking, it occurs when people create a reason that seems to defend their behavior. Okay, so I came here and I just snatched the phone away from your from your daughter. And I'm telling you, well, I had to snatch it from her because she's rude. She didn't give me any attention. She did not respond to me. I am justifying bad behavior. Now, this is my problem. However, I need to inform you that you need to be aware of my bad behavior. Because I just gave you what I thought was justification, I'm asking you to pull on your wisdom to recognize something that is abusive. My pulling it away from her, the energy that I used was abusive. And I just created a reason to tell you why I should practice that behavior. Be careful, use your wisdom, put on your spiritual eyes as well as your earthly eyes. Watch what's happening. Now, something else that you might experience is minimizing or maximizing. That's incorrect thinking. Now, I'll tell you something. I may say to you, well, where are the keys? Did you have the keys last week? Don't worry about that. That's nobody's responsibility. We don't have the keys. I have a second key over here. Let's just keep on going. Well, I'm saying, well, where are the keys? What I just did was minimize
It's important
my
what you said.
weakness. And you're living with my weakness. You're gonna live with it all day long. We'll never address it because this is the second pair of keys that I've lost, right? So I'm going to minimize that. And that is irritating you. It minimizes you because you think that that's an important characteristic. You think that responsibility is an important characteristic in your partner, and it just irritates you because your partner keeps minimizing these things, all right? And so one of the last things I want to say is like justification. It's called rationalization. I'm giving you an excuse for everything I do. Now, you know, there's a difference between a reason and an excuse. I can give you a reason, and I'll give you the reason as to why I did this. I did this because I thought this is going on. I believed this particular thing was going on. And so this is my reason. Now you can identify the difference between a reason and an excuse. Once again, that interrupts the solidification in the relationship between you and your child or you and your spouse. It's very, very careful, ladies and gentlemen, to understand that because you have a thought in your mind, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct. Always go to the person you're speaking to. Ask them, how are they thinking? Where are they? How was your day? Identify that first, because then you'll be able to identify why they're speaking with certain kinds of energy, right? I want to just segue a little bit into one of the really, really big issues right now. Pastor Boyd, we are losing our loved ones. We're losing our husbands. We're losing our wives. We're losing our children, our friends, our family members. We're losing our lovers. And we couldn't touch them. We couldn't speak to them. They were taken away from us. I want you to know that what you have to do is you have to process through that sadness. This is one of the most difficult things I've ever seen. The traditional ways of grieving, it had to change. We're not doing what we do, what Kubler-Ross says we got to do to go through each one of the stages.
Yes.
All right? This is extremely difficult. I want you to know that what you have to do is cry. Crying is like cheering when we see our student walking down the graduation aisle. We're standing up and we're cheering. We cheer because we identify the value in that individual that we love. When we cry, we're crying because of the value in that individual that we lost. I want you to know that you're going to feel sadness and maybe some anger. You're going to talk to, at this time, ladies and gentlemen, you know what? You will find a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a coach, a counselor, or a therapist. That's what's going to come out of this pandemic experience for you. You will have them on your speed dial. You have them on your favorite list. They will be added to your physical family physician. You have to have that. Just a side segue here, married couples enter marital therapy every 7 years because your life changes. If you're not entering every 7 years, by the time you enter with a big bear on your shoulders. When you come in, you're not crazy. We don't look at that anymore. What your clinician will do is help you to become your most resourceful self versus your non-resourceful self. So coming out of this pandemic, one of the things you want to do is get a referral, talk to somebody that is talking to somebody, look at your insurance plan, but find a mental health provider. They'll be able to talk to you as you process through this loss. They'll be able to help you with the sadness that you're feeling. They'll be able to help you with the anger. They'll be able to help you with your crisis of belief. I don't know where God is right now. He didn't stop that loss in my family. Allow yourself to discuss these things with your therapist. I want you to know that loss, the death that you're experiencing has no stopwatch. Has no stopwatch. I want you to know your time, the time you need to spend to get through that loss is your time. I also want you to know that you don't get over the death of your loved one. You don't get over that.
Get through it.
You process through it.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to feel, with the help of your clinician, you will feel the feelings. You will be able to talk about it. You'll be able to identify certain thoughts that can get you right back on track. But you are going to process with it. You're going to learn about the phases as you're going through this emotional healing. You're going to be aware of the phases of grief and healing as you're going to go through. If you came into my office, do you know something? I'm not being extreme. You're going to stay with me for about 12 months. This is why. Because you see, we are going to go over all of the anniversary dates. We're going to go over the birthdays. We're going to come through 2 months from now. This is the birthday of my loved one that was lost. Then we're going to go through and we're going to talk about every year our families got together and we had a barbecue. You're coming in then too. You're going to go over when there were possible, maybe there's graduations that were missed. How are you feeling then? How about the wedding coming up? Mom and dad, they're no longer here. Then there's Thanksgiving, then there's Christmas. Also, during that time that we're spending with you, some clinicians may require that you bring in photos, doing phototherapy. We're going to talk about the picture that we saw on the cruise. We're going to talk about the picture in Central Park. We're going to talk about the family picture. As you look at it, you see your loved one, but they're no longer here. They won't be in the next family picture. Why are we doing this? Because we are digging down, we are excavating into those feelings, surfacing the tears, and we're going to cheer again and cry. You're going to bring in your family members. And the family members and you are going to talk about that person that you lost. And you're going to hear different stories from your family members. That's going to make you do what? Cheer, cry, because we're excavating. We're going down to the seed and pulling up all of those feelings. We want to leave no dimension undone. You can bring in your girlfriends. You can bring in your brothers. You can bring in your tribe because they know They knew the relationship you had with the person that you love. And once again, we're going deep and we're going to sit in there and you are allowed to cry because you are celebrating the value of that person that you love. After that year, I want you to know that you will learn. You're gonna learn a couple of things. You're gonna ask yourself, what next? You are going to identify that you can impact your future. We can't control what happened. And I'm not saying that lightly. I understand how you loved him. I understand how you needed her. I understand the void that is in your life as you walk forward. This is not an easy thing. I understand that you had to grieve without touching, without embracing. I understand that when you heard the news, that you were still maybe in the basement, living in the garage. Don't do this alone. If you cannot do it alone, don't do it alone. If you have the love and support of your family and friends, you are blessed. I still recommend that you see a mental health provider because you see there's a purpose to grieving with emotional intelligence. You are going to become knowledgeable. And do you know that knowledge is one of the sources of hopefulness? You know from whence you've come, you know where you are going. The goal of grief therapy is to help you repurpose your life, help you find new meaning for your life. It's to help you practice self-care and to help you arrive at a place of calm acceptance. The time to love is now. This is not a dress rehearsal. We will not be returning to correct anything.
Thank you so much, Jazz. We really, really appreciate your time. I really want to encourage everybody to take from this the importance of your mental health. We're talking specifically about stressors at home, but the stressors that we're feeling now are going to carry on so much further than this quarantine time. It's so important to appreciate the fact that what's going on with you right now is changing you. And it's going to be incredibly important to seek help before these problems become problems that you can't bear anymore. So thank you very, very much for everything you shared with us. So we're going to take some time to let everybody ask a couple of questions. Pastor Boyd, you have a list of questions from people that have been sending them to you. I'm going to go on ahead and start by letting everybody else ask their questions. Then we'll let Pastor Boyd ask his list of questions. And as folks ask their questions, ladies, whoever feels like they've got an answer for whatever the questions are, feel free to go on ahead and talk. Anybody have questions? So we'll go on ahead and let Pastor Boyd get us started.
Some of the questions we received, I sent on to the providers, of some of the answers were couched in the information that they shared. And I thought the presentation was very good, by the way. I want to reiterate that she mentioned true techniques, boundaries, and perspective thinking that I think are important techniques we want to pick up on. I also want to say something I withheld when she was talking about grief. The purpose of a funeral is missed. A quality spiritual leader can lead you through a grief process. That's why you never tell a person, don't cry or stop crying at a funeral. Let them express. Yeah, I think you've heard me say, and we won't belong there. But here's one of the questions. to any of the three of you. How do you deal with caregiving stresses? You're a caregiver. It's stressful enough. Now you're locked down. How do you manage the caregiving stresses while you're locked down?
Well, I can speak a little bit about that because it goes back to this whole concept of taking care of yourself, self-care, as a part of sustaining yourself so that you continue to do the job. And also, again, with what Jas was talking about in terms of having boundaries so that you can give yourself a space away from that role as a caretaker and allow yourself to rejuvenate and feed yourself the emotional supports that you need. Sometimes when you're a caretaker, you feel purposeful and you feel effective, you're doing something good, and that can enforce a positive feeling about yourself, which is a good thing. But it also can make you feel fairly helpless at times when there's pain or when there's suffering. And when your typical resources aren't available to you, then again, you are stuck with a feeling of no control. So I think as a care provider, if someone's physically ill or someone who is dependent, then you have to, again, have the flexibility in your thinking and your emotions to provide a sense of support, but at the same time, make sure that you do that in doses and do that in doses for yourself as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Scott. Pastor Boyd, next question.
Sorry, I was muted. Here's one that just came into me. Well, I don't know. What I think the person is saying is, what if they feel mistreated? What if they mistreat you? If the caregiver, if you feel the caregiver is mistreating you?
Oh. You know, that the idea of that is so painful. Now, if the caregiver is not treating you properly, I know that you feel as if you have no one you can call out to. If you're maybe in a nursing home, maybe you're at a home privately, you're not sure how that caregiver will impact the rest of your family. I would encourage you to call out to someone. That caregiver can only do damage to you because that caregiver is there. You find the person that will believe you right away. Call out to them and as much as possible, tell them. And see, in this time of crisis, I would say to those that are listening, you have to be an advocate for the patient. I recognize this firsthand working in the medical system. I recognize that when individuals, patients, have advocates that come in, that speak to the providers, that ask questions, it keeps a provider on their toes. They're human too. So speak out, be fearless, because you see, God doesn't give us the spirit of fear. What is implied here is that the enemy gives you the spirit of fear. God, we have love, we have courage, and we have a sound mind. Activate these elements within you.
I would also say that we can't assume that even professionals, people who are trained, are not susceptible to the same stressors, mental health issues, and there is no protection if you have intelligence, degrees, whatever. We all are vulnerable to the same kinds of things: negative behaviors, negative thoughts, overly stressed, lashing out. So this is a time where we all have to be aware of that even people who are there to provide support and care, we've known that there are people who take advantages of situations, and sometimes it's not necessarily a deliberate behavior. It may be an overreaction or retaliation out of their own stress or distress, but there are people who are deliberately taking advantage of the situations that put everyone vulnerable, more vulnerable than they normally would be. So just don't underestimate the impact of this on any individual, whether you think they should be professional enough to act differently. And there are crisis lines, senior protective services, children's protective services, 24-hour crisis lines in most cities and states. So if you don't have a friend or a family member to call, be sure that you can call that 611 in Georgia and Fulton County. But there are other direct lines for help and support.
As an extension of that question, what if the abuse is reversed? Rather than the caregiver abusing the one to whom care is given, what if there is a mental health issue and the one to whom care is given is abusing the caregiver?
And that scenario is not that uncommon in many cases. I know we have patients that have early dementia, other changes, a lot of the mental health patients that are involved in group care settings. So yes, we definitely have that reverse scenario. And in that situation, again, if you don't feel like you can redirect and manage that person's behavior, then you need to seek that additional help and support. It may be a sign of some type of regression in their mental state. It may be their own reaction to stress. Demented patients can oftentimes deteriorate throughout the day, and they have fluctuations, particularly in the evenings. They may become more combative or confused. So there are a variety of different things that can be scenarios. And they may not even be at a point where they are in full control. So if you're dealing with a situation and you feel like you don't have the capacity to address that patient's behavior or needs, then you do need to seek help, collaborate with other professionals. And if a person becomes a danger to others or to themselves, then again, that becomes a crisis call.
If I may, Pastor, if this speakers will allow me to make a comment, especially relating to the previous statement, what happens if you have a caregiver that's abusing your loved one. I know it's rather difficult to do now because of the stay at home and everybody's on lockdown. But I did experience some of that. My wife is an Alzheimer's patient. And so the thing that I had to do, and I was retiring and I moved her to a caregiving, I won't mention the name, place before I moved back to Texas. We were living in Massachusetts. And so I noticed when I would visit, as I was wrapping up things in Massachusetts, some of the caregivers were saying, well, I was getting information that, sometimes my wife Madeline was not being treated as they thought she should have been treated. And I noticed that when I finally moved, that I spent before I call it the lockdown, I spent 5 out of 7 days with her, at least 4 hours a day, and that all changed. And actually, I ended up moving her from one place to another. And I noticed that when people see me so often, or see me so often, that basically, and they know my name, and when I come into the place and they see my interaction with her, and I speak to everybody and what have you, then they treated her differently. Matter of fact, I would leave sometime late in the evening because I would put her to bed, and they would say, we're glad you're here. And some of us feel like you're doing our job, but we're glad to see you here because there's so many families who don't come by and see their loved ones. And so now, since you can't visit, since I can't visit, the next thing I do, I call every day. I talk to the director, I got a couple of nurses' numbers, and I call to see how she's doing. And I know the director of the memory unit, and I have the number of the director of who's over the facility where my wife is. And so I make virtually daily contact, and I really don't care if they think I call too much. And so basically I maintain that contact, and it's friendly. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I'm checking to see how things are going. Now in my situation, my wife has had 2 brain surgeries, and so she's being cared for by a neurosurgeon. She does have appointments. I do have to take her to those appointments. And so fortunately, in the last 4 weeks and last month, I've seen her twice. I've been blessed to see her twice. And she has been, in my opinion, from not seeing her, she's looking well. Now, but every time I notice that perhaps they need to be, for instance, the last time I saw her was last Thursday. I take her to her appointment, so I kind of check her out. And we had some time, and we pulled over in the parking lot. And I know I'm being long, but I'm making a point. And I took off her shoes and her socks. I wanted to check her toenails. They hadn't been trimmed. And so I was prepared to do that. And I had some sanitary wipes, and I wiped them off and cleaned them off and everything, and put her socks and shoes back on. Her nails had not been trimmed, and I did that. And so I noticed that also her face had not been, sorry. I wiped off her face, and I saw that, okay, she must not have had at least the face washing for that day. And so what I do is, I call the director, and I just, afterwards I took her back, and a few hours later I called the director and I said, I have some observations, and here's what I've observed, and here's some of the things that I've done. And the director said, well, we'll get right on that. We'll get right on that, Chip. We're sorry about that. Get right on that. And so, and then also, when I didn't realize that when we got to the doctor's office, her pull-up, I don't like the term diapers, but her pull-up, she was completely soaked. Had soaked through her pants. And so I had an extra one, and I took her in the men's bathroom and changed her. And I always bring extra clothes in case something like that happens. And so when I mentioned that to them, and so, hold on.
I know, buddy.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right.
Yeah, I brought that up to them also. And the lady just, she, profusely on the phone. And I know the director, they have folks around there to do that. And I know that they are very busy based upon, because it is for them, they're on lockdown. And so they can't have a lot of folks associating with them. I mean, real close together. So my point is that if you see something, the only way you're going to see something or hear something, you have to maintain that contact. Again, since we're all on lockdown or stay at home, I'll use that term, it becomes a little bit more difficult to do. But you have to show interest, because since my wife has been where she has, in the last 8 months, 3 people have died. And those folks, even before the stay at home took into effect, hadn't seen loved ones in a long time, I was told. So you really, really had to keep on top of that. Sorry for taking up so much time. Thank you.
No worries. No worries.
You can comment on my comments. I have no problem with that.
Anybody want to? Either of you presenters?
It's my heart goes out to you. I understand what you're feeling, and I applaud you for giving that feedback and staying on as an advocate for your wife. I applaud that you're here at the latter part of your marriage and doing all those things for her. True love.
Amen.
Thank you. After 50 years, that's just what you sign up for. And so, we're married 50 years. It will be in September. And so, I love her like I did the first day I saw her.
All right.
Good, thank you.
My buddy, my good friend, Dr. Kerry Maxwell from the University of New Haven in Connecticut is on. And he sent me a question. I'm going to read this question. I can't do all of them, so I'm going to do a few of them. When parents and/or adults do not prioritize good mental hygiene, can you share some of the non-acute signs that can tell you things are slowly heading in the wrong direction? Is that so? Adults, parents, mental health, mental hygiene, they don't prioritize good mental hygiene. How do you know when it's going in the wrong direction? Are there some signs, some non-acute signs?
Well, when you say non-acute signs, I would say you just look for changes that are unusual. I always talk to patients when I am assessing where they are in their course in treatment. I ask them about their sleep pattern. I ask them about changes in various behaviors. Also, you want to look and see how they're reacting to minor situations, if they're overreacting or if they're having these distorted thoughts, as Jazz talked about, catastrophic thinking. But the most important thing is if you know what a person's general baseline is like and you start seeing things differently, it's important to start asking questions, not make assumptions, but start asking questions. You can notice things about how they're sleeping, how they're eating, how they're caring for themselves. You can see if they're doing self-care, setting boundaries, and taking time to do some things to relax. But more importantly, we always have to ask people, how are you doing? And see what they can share with you. Make yourself available. Make yourself available. Don't say, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting like that? But to ask the question, to show concern, what's going on. And the more you do that, just being present, then you'll begin to have a better understanding, and maybe there can be some sharing of what's going on, and you can work through that or get some help to address it. But if you sense some change, if you even have some knowledge of a person's mental health problems or issues or concerns, people may start to do things, start drinking, smoking. There are so many things. When I have patients come into the office, and I can often see a big change in their behavior, how they're dressed, whether or not they put themselves together well. I can see if they have started smoking again, asking them questions about, there are certain telltale signs if you know a person's baseline when things have been different, and then you can begin to ask the question. And hopefully that communication will help you find out a little bit more.
Excellent. Let's try one more question. Dr. Bone, you talked about engaging children. You gave a very nice schedule. You said we don't have to follow that schedule, but what, you got a child at home and the child is acting out and they're saying that I miss my friends. I want to see my friends, and we don't do anything. I need something different, mama or daddy. And mama wants them to get the schoolwork done because mama's afraid they're going to be behind when school starts again. I know you said some good things, but there may be somebody that missed some of that. Would you please speak to that?
Well, I'll address the last part first. All of us will be pretty much in the same boat when school starts back in August. And as educators, we are making plans to address that as soon as we come back. All of our planning for training for our teachers this summer is about revamping the curriculum so that we can go back and recapture these last 6 weeks of school, 6 to 9 weeks of school that we have missed. So that's not that, I don't want that to be a concern for parents. We are aware that that's going to happen all across the board. So let that not be the concern. But as far as the children missing their friends, I miss my friends. And as an adult, I am a social butterfly. It is very difficult for me. I'm starting to act like Gladys Kravitz and a puppy dog. Every time somebody goes past the window, I jump and I just want to see people. So I know the kids are feeling that. One of the things that we've done in our neighborhood with our kids is we've found creative ways for them to get out and be with each other without them being close together. We've done sidewalk chalk, different sensory walks for the kids so that when they go out, they can do, the different kids are doing the sidewalk chalk in the neighborhood so that other kids can follow their patterns. We've also done exactly what we're doing here. Google Hangouts and Google Meet is free. Zoom is free now, of course, as well. And I hang out with my girlfriends every single weekend, and the kids hang out with their friends as well. Our teachers are doing Zooms so that all the classmates can come together, and they do a Zoom just once a week, just so kids can get on there with their teacher and just talk about anything. So if your teachers aren't doing that, if you can get the email addresses of the other kids, let the kids get on a Google Hangout or on Zoom and just let them talk to their friends like that. That does help. Another thing that I saw was very interesting. I thought it was amazing that one of our teachers was doing is she's going into the neighborhood, sitting at the end of the driveway, letting the kids bring their lawn chairs outside, and she's reading aloud to them. That's something that is easy to do. It's still keeping social distancing, but it's letting them see that familiar face. So there are creative ways we can do this electronically and without the kids actually being in each other's homes that we have to find in this way for them to interact, because I do validate the fact that they miss their friends. I hope that helped.
That helps. Thank you. Thank you. Here's a question. I think I'll make this the last one that I have. Sister Vanessa, if you have something. But this one, Vanessa, I think we're going to deal with this next week more. How to deal with domestic violence, be it physical or emotional, during this lockdown. Are we going to face that next week, aren't we?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's specifically what we're going to be talking about. But if anybody wants to give a short answer here, so that way whoever asked the question doesn't feel like we just kind of bypassed it.
Domestic violence is extremely important, extremely important. I'll tell you that I don't recommend anyone pray that away.
No.
I certainly, there are the 800 number for the domestic violence in your region. Definitely call. I know that they are still responding to calls. That's not one of the things that they've put aside, and follow their protocol. Now, as I would say, call the appropriate authorities if that's still going on. Then you are going to go into the offices of your mental health care provider. You know, the thing about receiving abuse, where we have to go with the man or the woman is we have to go way back to the point where they developed their sense of, where the sense of self-esteem was damaged. So we're doing a lot of deep work there, because you see, when a woman or a man leaves a relationship that is not intellectually equitable, that does not have the equal sense of commitment and erotic passion, it is because their self-esteem has told them to walk away. That's how deep we have to go. And so you see, the experiences that damaged them did emotional damage also. I would say at this time, you make that call, they will respond. Don't pray that way.
Sister Vanessa?
That's an excellent point. Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to have a video that Pastor Boyd is going to play for us, and then we'll have closing prayer.
All right. Just a quick remark before I play this video. Presenter, you did a wonderful job. What you mentioned about the thought life made me think that if we look at it, I guess you can be manipulated by memory.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Here we are. I got this from Brother Walton.
You know, we're facing unprecedented times right now. So there's never been before in human history.
Pastor, you're not sharing your screen.
Oh,
People are hurting.
okay.
People are.
Let me do it again. Thank you, Walton. Now let me get back to the video. Uh-oh. I want to play that video. Walton, do you have it? Looks like I lost it.
I have it, but I'm not prepared to play it from my tablet.
Let me bring it up. Hold on. Chat a minute. I'm going to.
Williams, if you can send it to me on the group chat, I'll try to see if I can find it. And the link.
I had it all queued up. I gotta find it again. Now, we may have to close without it because by the time I get to it, we're holding up everyone.
Oh, that's all right.
Here
So,
you go.
oh, you got it? Okay.
It's loading up. I'm sending it to you and Lester. When I didn't share my screen, I lost it. It's loading slow. It's a beautiful video. I like the video. I like to play it.
Let me try.
All right, here you go. I sent it to you, Vanessa.
Let me try.
You got it loaded? Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes,
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
yes.
There it is.
You know, we're facing unprecedented times now. Such as never been before in human history. The whole world has shut down. People are hurting. People are asking questions. Is this the end of the world? Well, no. But it is a precursor to things to come. People are asking, where is God in all this? Well, the answer's easy. Right where we left him, on the outside of our world. So how did we get to this place of chaos? We took God out of our schools. Well, guess what? Our schools have shut down. We took God out of our places of work. Guess what? Our places of work have shut down. We excluded God from our social life. Guess what? Our restaurants, clubs, sports arenas, and our most favorite activity, frivolous shopping, have all been shut down. We took it out of our governments. Guess what? Our governments are confused and don't know what to do or how to govern in this present crisis. We've even excluded God from our families. Guess what? It feels like we're shut indoors with someone we don't want to be with and away from the people we really want to be with. Instead of putting our trust in God, we put our trust in ourselves, but we're failing. We put our trust in governments, but they're failing. We put our trust in doctors, God bless them, but they're overwhelmed and failing too. So where is God? Right where we put him, outside of our lives. Oh, but what about the church? Well, we failed to reach the world, and we shut ourselves in the four walls of the church and preached to ourselves once or twice a week, and never saw or interacted with our church family or the world for the rest of the week. Guess what? Now there's no going to church. But wait, there is light at the end of the tunnel. God is still there, waiting to be invited back into our lives, not just at Christmas, Easter, or even once a week at church, but into our daily lives, our homes, our schools, our workplaces, our social lives, our governments, our hospitals, our world. This is not about religion. It's personal to you and starts with inviting God into your world by putting your personal well-being in his hands. Every day, in every area of your life, and just trust in Him to be God for you. Let's just admit it. We missed it, and we need Him. Pick up that good book today, the Bible, and read something. Maybe you could start with this. John 14, verse 6. Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. Then just talk to Him. He'll listen. He's really good like that. God bless you, and may His peace be with you.
Thank you, Walton, for catching that. Let's have a word of prayer to close out with until next week. We'll meet at the same time. We'll have Dr. Terry Parks. We'll have Ronnie Vanderhorst. We'll have one other Dr. Henry, and we'll have Sister Jazz will be back with us again. Let's bow our heads together. Heavenly Father, thank you for your blessings upon us. Thank you for the insight we gained this evening. Now may your spirit pervade all of our lives, our families, our children. Give us wisdom. Give us the sense of contentment of your divine presence. May there be a joy in our homes. May there be a safety in our homes. May there be a place where loveliness comes to dwell. All because we put our confidence and trust in you and live up to those things that your word shows and teaches, and the insights we gain about how our minds work, how to relate to one another, how to love one another, how to be patient, how to feel your divine touch in all that we do. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thanks, Sister Vanessa, for her wonderful, wonderful outline of the programs. Dr. Bone, thank you very much. Sister Theodore, Dr. Scott, all of the folks who came out. God be with you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. You guys were
Good night.
awesome. Great information.
Praise the Lord. Next week.
Hey, Romy.